All right, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another Stock Market Outlook video brought to you by the Trade Lab. I'm going to be doing these weekly from here on out. Hold me to it. And today, as always, we're going to dive into the market indexes, the key leadership, what's going on in the markets, and discuss its trend and potential scenarios into early next week. So thanks so much for joining us. Let me know in the comments, first things first, before we start the video, what are your thoughts about the market? Give me, one or two sentences, and also how you've been doing. It's been a while since I've done a video, and looking forward to get back and start posting again much more regularly on my channel. There's a lot of great stuff coming, so make sure to leave a like down below and be on the lookout for those videos. So let's go ahead and dive right in. First things first, talking about the QQQ, we'll take a high level perspective first. It's been a while. We started this market uptrend really as we reclaimed the 21 EMA. And let me actually add the market cycle indicator here in deep view. Let me add that there. And let's make this exactly how I would want it. Let's add the 21 EMA here. So really the uptrend started right here as we reclaim that moving average. There's a short break below it here, but we're right back into this level and potentially challenging that 21 EMA here on Friday. So, just taking a step back, we've been in this trend for quite some time. It's been very lucrative. There's been some great spots to, focus on in terms of market leadership or just trading, the TQQ. This is up 25% during this period. But right now, we've been in kind of a choppy consolidation period really since the end of July. To my reckoning, we did break down, recover, but then broke down again, and now we're potentially doing it a third time, which is basically what I'm on the lookout for. Last Thursday, everything was looking very positive. We broke out of the short-term range here, and the expectation from my end was that we're going to follow through to the upside and continue to trend as we've been doing. But on Friday, what happens? Instead of following through to the upside, we gap down and fall through lower, testing that 21 EMA. This is kind of the bearish case that I put out in the Trade Lab report on that Thursday. That would be kind of what the bears would be looking for, and that's what transpired. But we don't know what's going to happen yet after this bar right here. Do we continue lower, test the 50 SMA, start a further correction, just continue to chop higher? Or, Monday, or sorry, not Monday because it's Labor Day. Do we just recover, snap back? That would be what the bulls really want to see to keep this trend alive and keep things moving. We'll have to see. We'll go through the market leaders as well, the mega caps, because that gives a whole other different perspective that is much more, more relevant to a lot of people's trading. The QQQ can just be trending and it can be a good environment. There can be big downside reversals, but as long as the stocks that you're actually invested in, trading at that moment, if they're holding up well, that's what ultimately moves the needle in our accounts. But from a high level perspective, all you really need to know is we've been in an uptrend for quite some time. We're potentially in some chop or testing the 21 EMA, which is kind of my guiding light. So for me, with a one-day negative expectation breaker pulling into 21 EMA, I'm much more cautious and just kind of waiting to see, how things play out from this point. So let me know in the comment section right now what your thoughts are on the QQQ and just the market at large. And I do want to mention, if you want a written version of this analysis, you can go ahead and click the link in the description as well as popping up right now. Basically, this is my weekend report that I send to Trade Lab members, and I'm making it available this weekend. So you can go ahead and take a look at all my thoughts on the indexes, key stocks, as well as my weekly focus list for next week. Again, that's a link in the description. All right, so in addition to the QQQ, I like to take a look at the SPY. Very similar action. We made a new high here and are resolving down here, holding that 10 EMA a little bit stronger than the QQQ. So right now, the uptrend is intact. We're trending above that 21 EMA, that rising 21 EMA. Just testing the 10 EMA, so this is a little bit stronger than the Qs. Looking at IWM, let's take a look at that index. This has been stronger since this bar. We're kind of trending higher, not necessarily high volume here. But nothing's broke right now. We're still trending above a rising 10, 21, and 50 SMA. So things look strong from this perspective. But bring up the IBIT, which is obviously a proxy for Bitcoin, as well as just kind of a risk on, risk off indicator. This has been in a downtrend really since this negative expectation breaker on this symbol here, this equity, and is pulling back, tried to rally, and then another negative expectation breaker, and now is following through to the downside after testing the underside of these declining moving averages. So this is in a short term and really at this point an intermediate term downtrend, and is a lot weaker than the Qs, the SPY, but the QQQ is, putting in some signs that, it's not quite in a strong uptrend like we've seen at this point, or especially after the turn and start of this uptrend. So we'll have to see what happens going forward into next week. Looking at the mega caps, Google just trending higher, very strong, one of the strongest of the mega caps recently. It made new highs here and is acting well, trending beautifully above those moving averages. Apple also strong push higher, pulled back into the 10 EMA area, and now is forming it out a consolidation pattern. This could just be kind of the handle of this larger formation and a nice constructive inside day. So relatively strong versus the QQQ, especially on this past Friday. However, when we get down to Microsoft, this has been weak since this reversal on the earnings gap, relatively weak. And is trying to form up here against the moving averages, the 50 SMA, and did pull back pretty constructively here on Friday and the end of the week, just below the 21 EMA. So I could envision, and bulls would basically want to see a break higher, pop through those moving averages, but overall it's in a short-term downtrend below the 21 EMA. And this also could be a spot where it would reverse strongly downwards and really start, a firm downtrend. And these levels down here would be the key ones to watch to see if they break or not. Amazon chopping around a little bit. Nice recovery since this earnings gap down above the moving averages. Inside day, but a pretty weak inside day here on Friday, and just testing that 10 EMA. Meta weaker here since this earnings gap, and now is testing the 50 SMA and below that 21 EMA. You can see how it was rejected a few times at that level. It couldn't push through. And on this day, on Thursday, nice upside reversal. The expectation is for it to finally break higher. Instead, again, negative expectation breaker. We gap down and fall through to the downside. And just want to pause here real quick. The negative expectation breaker is a really powerful concept. This is adopted from, stuff that Mike Webster developed, but basically from the closing range and basically general action of the day before, you should have an expectation of, that if the strength follows through, what would happen? And here we've got an upside reversal, good close. The expectation is we fall through to the upside. Instead, we break expectations with a gap down and then a negative close. So that's basically what a negative expectation breaker is, and it can be the start of a short-term or even longer-term downtrend when that occurs. Will something happen a little bit similar here? This didn't have a strong close, but if you envision this closing near highs, then we get a gap down the next day and negative close. That would be another example of a negative expectation breaker, and just a really powerful concept, and it works to the upside as well. A positive expectation breaker, those can start short-term and intermediate term trends, and it's so key to be able to kind of develop that know-how of the basically be able to develop the expectation of what happens next. So definitely a concept worth paying attention to, and I might actually make a video completely on that subject. All right, NVIDIA, this was the big name in the news. Obviously, we're in this consolidation here. We had earnings, very volatile day, closing right near the open. And I thought this was pretty positive given the action during the post market. It was down a bit, it recovered, and pretty much was unchanged after earnings. But it was unable to push through this consolidation, which it's been consolidating for a few weeks. If funds really wanted to go after this name after that earnings report, why didn't they push it higher and break it out of here? And instead we leak lower below the 21 EMA. So we'll see if this can snap back quickly. Otherwise, I think it will be testing that 50 SMA. And this has had a really nice run since its recovery, and is due for a pause. And this is a pretty tight flat base. So even if it consolidates, undercuts the 50 SMA and keeps building out, still a name worth watching. And this is a pretty constructive so far, but now is showing a little bit of warning sign as it breaks below the 21 EMA. And lastly, we've got Tesla. This has been forming a consolidation for quite some time. It looked like it was approaching these base highs late last week, but instead we get a leak lower and then a big bar down here on this past Friday, testing the 21 EMA. volatile, not really forming up, and just relatively weak given where it's at. But, it's consolidating. So if it firms up, positive expectation breaker on Tuesday, and acts well since it's been inside day, this could be one to really focus on because it's got that potential. When it moves, it can really run, 50% in just a few weeks. So if it sets up, recovers, tightens up here, I'll be definitely having it on my focus list to see if there's an actual spot to get in. So that's a few of the key mega caps. Now, I did want to talk about a few other names. Most notably, let's do Reddit. This of the current growth stock leaders acted the best here on the past few days. Instead of the QQQ, which broke lower and had a negative bar down, we had a very tight inside day. So I'll be watching for a break above these highs and a break into basically new highs. Well, not quite new highs, but break above this key level here. And this is acting really nicely, and basically what you want to see after a nice, powerful, positive expectation breaker, because here we had a negative close. What happened the next day? We gapped up and had a very strong close, breaking out of this range. And now we're just kind of consolidating a very tight day. And often we see, re-expansion from tight days like this. But if this does break lower, that would suggest that this needs some more time, and likely the market is also, experiencing even more difficulties. PLTR, I also want to mention, this was, of course, the growth stock leader during all this period. It's acted tremendously. Very strong action, but since this gap up on earnings, we pushed higher, then broke decidedly below that. And this type of bar always gives me pause because it often happens more on the left sides of bases or the ends of trends versus after or right before things just kind of recover and snap back. We did have something like that here, but this looks a little bit stronger. We had a nice upside reversal, and so far it's refused to break lower from this range. But, is also has a little bit of the look of a bear flag. We're stuck below those declining moving averages, and where it expands on Tuesday probably will indicate the direction the next few days, next few weeks. So I'll be watching this pretty closely. It seems a little bit early for this to be, a proper base where it just recovers to new highs very quickly. Ideally, it pops higher, consolidates, pops higher, consolidates, and then sets up. That could really set up a bigger move versus if we just snap back to highs, that would be a little bit out of character. But I'm also on guard to see if it breaks lower, and these range lows would be key. The 50 SMA would be key. And then if we get down there, this level would be key as well. So Palantir experiencing, intermediate term weakness, and now is just kind of forming out a range here, and we'll see which way it expands from this level. A-Lab, another name that's been acting really well and held up really well late last week. We did pull back on Friday, but we're just kind of testing the high of this prior range that we were able to pop through. Relatively strong. You can see we're in an RS uptrend and holding that 10 EMA. So this will be a key level as well as that 10 EMA. Ideally, it puts in an inside day, sets up another pivot, and then breaks out and continues to trend. But this has been really strong and acting well, and obviously is in the semiconductor space. A great pick and shovel play on the data centers. And just a name to watch in general, especially because of this very strong growth. Great earnings surprise as well, earning 44 cents when the estimate was 11 cents on the most recent earnings report. Those are the type of numbers that can let a stock double or lead to a stock doubling. But also, of course, the market is a huge part of that. And that's really something I want to stress in today's video. These individual stocks are all well and good, but if the market pulls back, consolidates more, it's going to be tough for these names to really make a meaningful move when the market is chopping up and down, gapping down, experiencing other news events, all of that. So, these are names that definitely have on your radar, and keep watching for spots as we kind of see what direction the market really goes after Friday's action. And one other thing I did want to mention on Friday's action, it did come with kind of some news later on in the day. I think after the market closed, there was some uncertainty about tariffs, if they're legal or not. I'm not going to get into politics, but that adds uncertainty, and that's one thing that the market does not like, uncertainty. So that could lead to more pullback, more volatility in the short term, which would be negative for overall stocks. All right, I want to see if there's any other key names I wanted to mention. Let's go to the leaders down here. See if there's anything else. Hood. Yep, let's do Hood. So let's bring that up. This has been acting well, and is forming out a base here. If we see how deep this is only about 18% deep. It's pulling into the 50 SMA, so it kind of basically a deciding point here. Do we push higher after it tests that moving average, or do we break lower? This will be a key level. The 50 SMA will also be a key level. It's pulling back, but on lower volume. And ideally it pops back through the 21 EMA, tightens up below this level here. Let me draw that out here, and then pops through that and really, keeps going. This has been a tremendous stock, great trades in this name, and just waiting for that next trend, and we'll see if that can emerge. And the first step would be getting back above that 21 EMA. We're testing a key level to the downside here off the 50 SMA, and we'll just have to wait and see what's in store for this name. But pretty much, I think that's what I wanted to cover today. I'll also be making a video tomorrow about my weekly focus list, so stay tuned for that. If there's any names that you'd like me to cover in tomorrow's video, let me know down below in the comment section. But until then, I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.